is Allison Brennan, and I am with Authors on the Air. And I am thrilled to have Kenna here with her new book, Burn This Night. Isn't this an amazing cover? I hope you could see it as well as I can. It is absolutely gorgeous with vibrant colors and definitely highlights the story inside. So definite cover envy here. And I welcome Alex. I called you Kenna. Sorry. um, Alex is from Los Angeles. She's a prosecutor. She's married with two young sons. So if we're all flustered here, it's because I have a grandson, she has little kids, and we probably are living on very little sleep. Welcome, Alex. Thank you for coming on Authors on the Air.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things I had wanted to ask, because the book takes place in part in Idlewild, and my brother-in-law actually lived there for most of his adult life. He is a wildlife biologist, and so I happen to know the area very well. Are you familiar with the area? Did you live there?
You know, it's actually there's a town called Wrightwood, which is I kind of combine. It's mostly set there, but I combine the names because I called it Idlewood. I didn't. I burned down a chunk of the town and I kill a bunch of people, so I didn't want to make it an exact setting. I thought that was kind of a bummer if you live there. So the name is kind of a combination of Wrightwood and Idlewild. But and Idlewild has been on my to-do list, but Wrightwood, it's kind of a similar vibe, and we ended up staying there for a couple months when my house was under construction. It's this beautiful town in the mountains in San Bernardino, and I was staying there right after I had my first kid, and so I would go for a lot of walks in the woods and kind of talk to the baby and think oh, who should mommy kill here. So that was kind of fun. I had my first book is really a true LA noir, and I wanted to kind of challenge myself and do a small town setting, and I wanted to kind of go for the vibe of this beautiful mountain paradise that also has this kind of sense of dread hanging over it just because of the Southern California wildfire risk, which is something that we live with. Is in my town, my husband and I had to evacuate before. There's a scene in the book where somebody is watching this fire and they're saying it looks like a volcano with lava coming down, and that was when we had evacuated a few years ago. That was my husband and I were standing on the street outside our house, and we saw this fire on the mountain in the distance, and it looked like a volcano. So I wanted to kind of combine that sense of this kind of idyllic small town beauty with the sense of it could all go up in an instant.
No, you portrayed that very, very well. I loved seeing it from the eyes of, I think it was Grace, the opening character, the opening scene, and where she had a relative living up there on the mountain, and all she's thinking of is, oh my God, this mountain is on fire, and is my sister up there? Is she in danger? How can I go help her? It was just very, very vivid, and you really felt like you were there in her shoes. And it was funny because I didn't know you before we did this interview that you had a baby, and then when you said you had a baby, it's like I was going, oh, she has a baby too in that opening chapter, walking late at night.
Yeah.
Trying to get this kid to go back to sleep, and I was like, oh, been there, done that.
Yeah, no, when I first wrote the book, that character she kind of snapped at her husband, and she was a little bit meaner because she was sleep deprived, and my husband read it, and I think it hit a little too close to home, and he was like, she is not a likable character. So I said, okay, point taken. I will tone down the yelling at the husband in baby induced stress moment.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, and they forgive us. So at least we hope. But I've been married for 31 years, so I don't think that anything's going to change. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Kate, your main character. She's a private investigator. She is driving the story, even though you have multiple points of view. She is what I'd call like the thread through. She is the primary character that everything is, kind of riding on, even though all these other characters have their point of view. Kate is an interesting character in that she is flawed, and she's had some issues with, she got hooked, she got in an accident, she got hooked on painkillers, and she's on the verge of losing her daughter. And it felt very relatable because you could definitely see that she wants to fix everything, but she's still kind of going through it day by day, trying to figure out how is she going to keep at least partial custody of her daughter. And I'd like to explore a little bit how Kate came about and why she was the best person to tell this story.
Yeah, well, she was also the protagonist in my first book, but it's not really a true sequel because they're two completely different stories. It doesn't really matter which one you read first. But I had started writing Kate, in a point where I had changed jobs. I was in really a point of transition, and then as the pandemic hit, and we were all kind of feeling a little bit. Having a bit of a collective out of body experience. And so I wanted to have a character who had basically been through this seismic traumatic experience and had to base their entire sense of identity essentially was kind of ripped away. Plus, I'm a little bit of a sadist, so I have to torture my characters. But when the story picks up, basically, she had been an LAPD officer. She was in this devastating car accident, ended up got hooked on pills, had to basically go out on disability. Only gets to see her daughter twice a month, but is also on the mend at this point. Has hung up a shingle as a private detective and is doing everything she can to get her daughter back and to kind of rebuild her life. So I wanted this character who's kind of reformulating who she is, has maybe made some mistakes, but is also working towards improving that. She hates herself a little bit, but doesn't really have the luxury to bask in that because she has to move forward and improve her life for her daughter. And so when this story picks up, she has put her house up on Airbnb to save some money to try for a custody fight, and is living with her mother, which goes about as well as one would expect for a 37-year-old woman who suddenly has to move back home.
No, and I thought that you handled Kate's conflict very well because she never seemed weak. She's very smart, but she seemed very human because we all make mistakes. We've all done things that we wish we could take back or that we wish we weren't in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And but she is moving forward. So like you say, she can't bask in it. She can't bask in her pain and suffering, but at the same time, she's dealing with it the best way she can. And I think also when you have kids, you tend to be a little stronger, because you have somebody else um, to kind of stand up for your child. So I thought it was handled. She was very, very likable while also being relatable, and flawed. I mean, you could say like, oh, I would never get hooked on painkillers if I had a kid. Well, you never know. I mean, if you're in a major car accident, you don't always know if you have an addictive personality until you get try them, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't stop them. So it was very, very believable. I liked it, but what I liked most about her is that she is very smart. She's a very smart character. She's doing because she was a cop. She when she goes into um, and I always walk carefully here because I never give anything away. But she's basically hired to help a family whose son was arrested for arson and murder of his sister, among I guess a lot of other people that died in this mountain fire. So she's brought in basically to kind of help to either prove or disprove that he actually did it. He was arrested for the crime. And the way she approaches it is very well thought out. It's methodical. It's realistic. I love the way how she views all of the people that are now involved in her life. And in a way, it's also a way for her to um, kind of have a redo because she could bring her daughter up to the mountain. She's basically moving to this area for some weeks, however long it's going to take to solve the crime. So she could bring her daughter up there. She used to go up there as a child. It's a way for her almost to have a reboot and have some really quality time with her daughter. So I loved that whole setup and why it's so important for her to solve this case as well.
Yeah, so she's looking into this murder, and then there's another murder where she learns basically through a genetics website that she's distantly related to a cold case killer, and she's contacted by an old friend from law enforcement who kind of asked her to look into that as well because it happened in the same town. So I wanted to have kind of the two different murder threads kind of interweaving for her to be looking into them both at the same time. But yeah, it was her building her character was important. I wanted her to be really smart, but also really down to earth. And I just from being a prosecutor, I thought about a lot of the women police officers who I've worked with over the years, and there was one in particular who she was like the confession genius. She would just go in and talk to someone, and she happened to be beautiful, but she was also just brilliant and charming and down to earth and totally disarming. And within like 30 seconds, everybody is just spilling all their secrets. And I was always fascinated by her and thinking like, I have to take components of you and put you in a book. She does not know this, and I'm probably not going to be sharing that. That would be a very awkward phone call. But I wanted to kind of bring that sense that kind of balance of super smart, but maybe doesn't totally know it, and super competent, but also a little bit scattered and very down to earth. And because sometimes when you read about, you read strong female heroines, they're like, a total badass from page one, and they're doing karate kicks and everything. And I wanted to kind of mix her talents with her flaws and make her more like somebody who's strong but also struggling at the same time.
No, very well. My daughter's a cop, so I definitely know a lot of female cops and male cops. But no, I thought she was very realistic, very well done, and I loved her character. I what I brain fart. I had this thought when you were saying something, and then I should take notes because then I'll remember all my questions. Um, she was a very, very believable character. And I think that's why I liked her, is that I do love strong female characters, but they don't all kick ass. They're not all going to be strong, physically strong. Um, they are, I mean, most female cops are in shape, and so that they can run or they can do basic things, but they're not going to necessarily be the one doing mixed martial arts and taking down the bad guys. So she was able to use her skill set, which is basically training as a cop, with now years of experience just as a mom, as essentially a drug addict and recovering. And so she was able to use all of that in being able to help this family as well as her own, which brought me up to what I was about to ask. I knew it would come back to me. One of the most interesting threads in the entire book is the genetic thread, because I think we've all kind of explored genetics, especially now that everybody seems to be putting in their DNA. Of course, I get very, very paranoid. My husband put mine in, but I won't let him use my name. He had to use a different name for me because I get paranoid that, oh my God, now my DNA is out there. What's going to possibly happen?
You never know. Yeah.
Well, and remember, you probably remember this as a prosecutor, the Strangler, was the Night Stalker?
I think that goes to the Golden Gate Killer.
Oh, the Strangler. It was the one that when he killed, raped or killed 50-something women all up and down. Might have been the Golden State Strangler. He was found because of DNA, from a distant cousin.
Yeah, I had read about a couple of those cases when I was thinking about kind of putting the story together, and it was fascinating to me. And I've heard people kind of go back and forth about whether they would want to work with law enforcement if they found out that they had a relative who had committed murder. Whereas I'd be all on board. I'd be like, sure, I'll spit in a tube, whatever I can do. But it is kind of a mind exploding moment. And for her, especially, I wanted her to kind of have learn that around the same time that she learns that her biological father, who she was devoted to, was not her, or excuse me, not her biological father, but the man who raised her wasn't her biological father. So she's learning that she shares no blood with this person who she kind of idolized, and who was also a cop, and is one of the reasons she became interested in being a cop. But she does share blood with someone who murdered a teenager and buried her under a woodpile in a small town. So kind of like a double head trip that she's going through at the same time. But it's a fascinating area. And just in writing her character, I listened to a ton of these NPE, which is Not Parent Expected podcasts, just to get a sense of what is it like for someone who realizes that they're genetically not who they thought they were. And it's like, personally, I come from a really weird family, and it's not conceivable that such weird people could not be genetically related. So it's just, that was never even a question. Even like there's, Kate thinks she meets a relative and they both, have this, particular weird trait, and that's very unusual. And that was something where I was thinking about my mom and I both have this particular weird trait. But I tried to absorb as many first person stories of people who've actually gone through this as I could, and it was so fascinating, and heartbreaking to read about this, how your whole sense of reality can shift a little bit. Like the whole narrative thread that you've built through your entire life. Oh, this is who I came from. I'm just like my grandma in this way, but why am I not more like my family in this way? And all of a sudden, this bomb hits, and everything in your life is kind of the same, but it's also different at the same time. So I wanted to kind of explore that, and also again have this woman who's really strong and does what she needs to do, but now, on top of, having a dose of self-loathing from the mistakes that she's made, she also has to kind of rethink who she is and figure out where she came from.
I thought, no, I love that theme, and it also gives it just really adds some depth, because I do think that like, I didn't know who my father was when I was growing up. He basically left before I was born, and I never met him until I was 18. And you always wonder, it's like, who is he? I knew nobody in his family. I didn't know where half my genes came from. I do look like my mom, so it's like I did on my mom and on my grandparents. But you have this like void that you're like thinking, wow, where's half of me? Because you get half of your genetic material from your mom and half from your dad, and if you don't know what half of that is, you do feel a little bit lost. And I can imagine just her coming into it later in life, going, "Wait a minute, what?" I loved that aspect of the story, because I felt it gave it. First of all, it's not just a mystery. Meaning, obviously, it's a really, really compelling mystery. Very, very uh, well done, the way you weave in the multiple threads of these people's lives as we're coming towards the conclusion, but also because you're giving your character depth that is not always seen in mystery novels, which I really appreciate it. So
Thank you.
yeah, no, she was very interesting. Now, one other thing is I did actually get the book on Audible, because I tend to listen to books faster than I read them. Just
Hmm.
I walk every morning, so I'm listening to a book. So I listened to the first half of the book, and then I read the second half of the book, because I don't listen at night, because for some reason it makes me sleep. I don't know. I know I'm weird. So I love Audible, and I love audiobooks. I think they're very
Audiobooks are great. Yeah, for sure.
You listen to your narrators.
I'm really excited to. I just got a complimentary copy, but I have a 4-month-old and who hates the sound of electronic noise, which is devastating because I'm live in LA. I have horrible traffic. Like I consume most of my books like through Audible, and it's the second I put on a book, he wakes up and starts crying. So it's on my to-do list along with a bunch of other books by other people that I'm dying to listen to, but I haven't had a chance yet. But I do just like again for just from being in Southern California and having horrible traffic, I listen to a lot of audiobooks and I feel like it really affects how I write in a lot of ways because when you listen to an audiobook, you can kind of give a book like 80% of your attention. Or if you're on the LA freeway, it's like 60% on a good day. So I try to think about, you don't want to ever shortchange a reader in terms of like, you can't like make kind of easy steps and they're going to find all your plot flaws, but you also can't assume that somebody is, sitting there like a scholar, absorbing every word. And if you make things too complicated, if you don't have kind of repetitions of little points, people are going to get lost because they are reading your book or listening to your book and doing 100 other things and rolling down the window and cursing at the guy who just cut them off. And so just I feel like and it's probably true for a lot of writers, just kind of the advent of audiobooks is kind of changes how we think about writing and also about the reader experience.
Well, I think it's no, I agree. I think listening to audiobooks has made me more aware of how my characters sound. So I've always like read my dialogue out loud, because that's just to make sure it sounds natural. I've done that, been published now for 19 years, and it's just part of my process. Um, but I never read the whole book out loud. It was just, oh, I want to make sure the dialogue sounds right. Well, now I begin to read paragraphs to make sure that one, it has a good rhythm and it sounds good. I mean, I don't read my books because I have an awful voice. I hate my voice. But I love when I get a good narrator and they bring the character to life. And it's just, oh my gosh, did I actually write that sounds so good. And it freaks me out. People are going, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, but it's not me reading it. It's very cool. Anyway, I liked your narrators. I thought the female really did a great job with Kate, just made her just come off the page or come off of the out of the earbuds, however you want to say. So great job. So if anybody has an Audible membership or any other places where you get your audiobooks, it was definitely a strong narration.
Yeah, well, I was definitely excited that they got two narrators because I have my book. It's kind of alternates between Kate and then there's flashbacks with Abby, who's the woman who was killed, and Jacob, her brother, who's this mentally ill man who's accused of starting the fire. And so just having that they were able to bring in both a male and a female narrator was really exciting because sometimes you read a book and people kind of change genders and they start doing the voices. And you have like the male narrator who has this deep, rich baritone, and then he gets to like the vixen, and and he does the weird falsetto, and you're like, I don't know, but that was an exciting thing for me.
Yeah, I think female might be a little bit of a bias here. I'll firmly admit it. I think female narrators do a better male voice than male narrators do a female voice. And I think it's just because men have a heart when they have that, oh, hi, falsetto. It sounds fake. They're like all femme fatales and all sound like bimbos. And it's just, no. But there's obviously some narrators are better than others. And there's a couple male narrators that do a good job that, like I think Scott Brick is one of the best in doing female voices, but he almost exclusively narrates male driven stories. So it's not a lot. You're not getting that female voice, which is going to sound really off.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Now, so we have just a couple more minutes. I want to ask, what is coming up next after this Burn the Night?
I'm working on a couple standalones. So one is set in the horse racing world, and one is set in the Los Angeles court system. And I'm just kind of been going back and forth and working on those two, and seeing which one's going to be ready first. But yeah, it's been exciting. I like to have a couple different projects at the same time to because my brain kind of bounces around.
So no, I can understand that. Now, Burn the Night, this just came out, right? Just this month?
Yeah, on November 12th.
November 12th. So this is now available. Probably every mystery bookstore is going to have this, and hopefully all the other stores as well. But so go to your favorite mystery bookstore. I always have to give a little shout out to my local mystery store, the Poison Pen, because they will ship anywhere, whatever book you want. So, but do you have a local store that you like to recommend to your readers, or where you might be able to find signed copies?
I always love Romans, which is in Pasadena, and also because it's brand new that we have in Sierra Madre. We have a brand new bookstore called Fables and Fancies, and I just went over and signed some copies. But for a bookstore that's been open for like a week, I always want people to go out and to support them because we want the new bookstores to survive and to flourish.
Oh, so it's called Fables and Fantasies?
Fables and Fancies, and it's in Sierra Madre, just on the main drag. So if you're in the eastern half of LA County and passing near Sierra Madre, we want to give a boost to the new bookstores.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. We had a little technical difficulty at the beginning, but hopefully it all got worked out. And I am looking forward to anything else that you publish. Again, Alex's book, Burn This Night, is now available wherever you get your print, audio, or digital books. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.